You stand in a silk-draped chamber in 1539 Istanbul. The lamps smoke. The pillows smell of rosewater and wool. Tonight, they demand proof, the bedding ritual that makes dynastic heirs possible. Your pulse jumps when the door bar drops into place. A drum still thuds outside from the day's procession. Silver plates clink in the corridor. The palace seems to press its ear against your wall. You keep your face steady. Your hair is pinned tight. Your hands stain with henna. Every sound counts tonight. Every word will travel. The matrons taught you the steps. They spoke of blessings and patience. They spoke of duty. They never named fear. They never spoke of what happens if a princess refuses. You learn those parts from servants, not tutors. You learn to say nothing until you must. Power waits in silence. The imam read the contract earlier. The scribe recorded the mahr. Witnesses watched. Gifts came in procession. Your veil fell. Your slippers slid over a bowl for luck. The city shouted for you, daughter of the Sultan. You are 17. You know the names that matter. Your father rules. Your mother measures. Rustem Pasha stands beyond the door. Older, proven, hungry for rank. He knows that one report from you can raise him, or end him. He knows that the first night creates stories that last for years. He knows that the palace listens when you speak, and also when you say nothing. You breathe in. You count to 5. You listen to the corridor. Every wall carries whispers. They dressed you in heavy silk. They cinched a red belt. They placed pearls across your brow. The matrons joked to calm you. Their hands shook a little. The chambermaids warmed milk. An old nurse checked the bedding twice. A candle guttered near the lattice. You marked the drafts that snake through the room. You test the latch with your thumb. It holds. Protocol never forgets. What frightens you is not pain. It is witness. The maid who watches the door. The attendant who will lift the sheets at dawn. The rival women who will count signs. The scribes who turn rumor into record. You know that a princess cannot hide inside a chamber. Doors do not keep out the court. One wrong word can start a faction. Your mother came an hour ago. She smiled for the attendants. She kissed your brow. She said to trust your training. When the others stepped back, her voice dropped low. She named 3 women you could call if needed. She tapped your belt knot. She told you to make him speak first. Then, the door opened again, and her face turned to stone. She left without looking back. A small rule shields you tonight. The nurse placed a silver bowl by the bed. She set a strip of linen beside it. She folded the quilt straight. She placed a sprig of rue on the cushion. She whispered a prayer. She told you that breath controls fear. She told you that the first night is a test of tongues, more than bodies. Then she withdrew, counting steps, and the corridor fell still. The lock scrapes. You think of the city beyond the lattice. You picture ships along the Golden Horn. You picture torches along the walls. You think of how the household will change if you smile or if you frown. You think of your brothers and their tutors. You think of your father's eyes when he looked at Rustem at the feast. Timing decides fortunes. A murmur passes outside. A cup rattles. The bar lifts again. The door opens. Rustem enters with 2 matrons. He bows. He waits. The matrons adjust the candles, then step backward through the doorway. The door closes with a soft thud. You are alone with him. He keeps his eyes lowered. He says nothing. What is the first sentence you will choose? You let silence work first. You do not sit, you do not smile. You leave your hands on your lap. He waits. His eyes stay low. The belt knot rests under your palm. You feel the silk pull. Rank decides who speaks first. You test the room. The candle sputters. The nurse's bowl gleams by the bed. You remember your mother's tap on the belt. You think of the small rule she meant. You hold it now. In this chamber, the princess outranks the groom. He must not touch until you permit. He must not speak until you begin. He knows this. He stands still. One word from you can move the night. You start with a question. You ask if he remembers the scribe naming the Mar. You ask if he agrees to honor your attendance. You ask if he will wait while you drink. He answers each point. Short, respectful, calm. You listen for strain. You watch his hands. You nod once. You set the cup down. Now you choose the next step. The queen's daughter was 17. The groom was a veteran of court service. By 1539, Rustam held the horsemaster's staff and the sultan's notice. He had fought campaign weather and palace rivals. He knew ceremony. He knew the cost of a slip inside the harem, where protocol cut sharper than steel. The marriage had been sealed by contract that afternoon. Witnesses signed. Gifts crossed the marble courts in files. A chamber can decide a career. Earlier that day, the imam recited the formula. The scribe wrote the terms. The mahr was set. The princess's household cataloged dowry items and textiles. The Valide managed the order. The chief black eunuch marked the thresholds. Female attendants rehearsed the Gerdek steps. Music rolled across the gardens. The city watched the pageant and counted favors. Inside, the lessons were quiet. Who enters first? Who sits? Who speaks? Who lifts the veil? Who leaves last? Small gestures told large truths. Mihrimah's mother had coached restraint. No haste, no apology. Let him confirm the contract in his own voice. If he faltered, call the matrons. If he overreached, send the sign to the door. A princess had levers that no other bride held. Her word could call witnesses before dawn. Her frown could empty a corridor. Her nod could install a man in office. Rustam knew this and shaped his breath around it. He had more to fear than she did. Back to the chamber. He asks permission to sit. She grants it. He keeps space. He asks if she will drink again. She lifts the cup and refuses more. He praises her patience. He does not reach for the belt. He waits for her to speak the next line. The court wants a smooth report at sunrise. The rivals in the palace want any slip to use later. He chooses careful words. Time favors the patient tonight. A maid steps to the outer door and whispers to the guard. Then quiet again. The candles steady. The street torches outside dim as the courtyard empties. The house has given them privacy, but not blindness. Somewhere, a clerk writes times in a margin. Somewhere, an old nurse prays for peace between two strong wills. The night stretches. Every minute will be remembered. She speaks about her attendants first. Their names, their duties. He agrees. She speaks about her visits to her mother and to the Valide. He agrees. She names one private condition tied to the contract: the right to keep two senior servants of her choice near her door at all times. He does not argue. He repeats the condition aloud. He promises to honor it. She listens, then drops her hand to the belt knot. Promises now meet proof. He reaches, then stops. He asks for her word before he moves. She looks at the door, then back at him. She tells him to wait one more moment. He bows his head and lowers his hand. Silence deepens. A soft knock touches the outer wood. The guard murmurs a name through the lattice. Who stands outside the bridal door at midnight? The guard named the chief nurse. Daye Hatun stood outside with a covered tray. The matrons let her pass the lattice. She did not cross the threshold. She spoke one sentence. The Valide sent a token and a reminder of the rule. Then she withdrew, and the corridor fell still again. Privacy remained, but not ignorance. On the tray lay a small seal and a folded paper. The seal carried the Valide's mark. The paper listed the bridal conditions again in the scribe's hand. 2 senior attendants at the door at all hours. Freedom to visit her mother without delay. Respect for her private chapel and lessons. The last line repeated the point her mother had tapped earlier. The bride permits the first touch. The groom obeys. One line could protect a lifetime. Mihrimah read the paper in silence. Rustam did not look up. He knew that the presence of the seal meant eyes watched the hour. The Valide and her allies weighed not only the union, but his restraint. He had fought for rank for years. He now stood inside the most dangerous room in the empire, a princess's chamber on the first night. Dawn would judge them both. Outside the palace, the festival still burned low. In 1539, the court staged a long celebration. The city watched the Sultan present gifts. The marriage of Mihrimah to Rustam marked a high point. The Imam had sealed the contract. The Mahr was recorded. Craftsmen displayed pageant wagons. Musicians played. The circumcision of princes added to the scale. The chronicles listed fireworks, parades, and tents. Inside, the harem kept strict order. Public splendor hid private risk. Back to the chamber. She set the paper on the cushion. She thanked the Valide in a clear voice, knowing someone outside would note the tone. She kept her hand on the belt knot. She told Rustam to repeat the conditions. He did so, point by point. When he finished, she asked if he had any request before they proceeded. He asked only that the report to her mother be truthful and complete. He chose caution over pride. He had reason. His career rose under the Sultan's eye. He had served as Mirahur, master of the horse. He had proven skill in finance and command. He lacked one shield in the harem lineage. He was a palace-made man, not born to a ruling house. The alliance with Mihrimah could lift him to the Grand Vizierate in time. It could also mark him for removal if he offended the princess on the first night. Enemies waited for a mistake. Mihrimah knew the map of those enemies. Long corridors had taught her which women favored which pasha. The old guard mistrusted Rustam's rise. A single complaint would travel at dawn to the Valide and then to the Sultan. The complaint did not need detail. A word like haste, disrespect, or roughness could slow or end his path. No sword would be drawn. Doors would simply stop opening. One sentence could end a career. She asked him about his household, names, positions. He answered. She asked if he would allow her steward to audit dowry transfers quarterly. He agreed. She asked if he would secure a tutor for girls, born of the marriage, equal to the tutors of boys. He agreed. None of these demands were unusual for a princess, but the precision and the hour told him something else. She was measuring more than courtesy. 3 times she glanced at the door. 3 times the corridor stayed quiet. She turned back and asked him the final question for the night's start. Would he repeat before the nurse that he would not reach for her belt without her word? He nodded. He asked to call the nurse to hear him now. She agreed. He lifted the latch and spoke the promise through the lattice. Then the door shut again. This was the secret that set the night apart. The Valide had already placed Rustam's name on a short internal list for higher command. But a favorable first-night report from Mihrimah was a required step before any public move. The Sultan would not advance a man who failed his daughter in the chamber. The test was not force. It was restraint, patience, and obedience to contract. The first night was a gate to power. Now both knew the stakes. She set the paper aside and looked at the belt. He waited. The candles hissed. The nurse whispered a prayer outside. The house held its breath. What price would she set for her permission tonight? She set the price in measured steps. First, a written vow. He would put it in his own hand. He would sign it with his seal. He would confirm that he would not touch her belt without her word. He would confirm her right to keep her 2 senior attendants. He would confirm her access to the Valide without delay. He agreed at once. Paper speaks when rooms fall silent. She added a harder line. He would consult her each week on petitions that reached his desk. He would not remove her steward without cause stated in writing. He would not dismiss her tutors. He would not move her residence without her consent. He listened, then nodded. He asked for the paper. The nurse slid ink and reed pen through the lattice. A vow needed witnesses. He wrote. He spoke each line aloud. He sealed the bottom with wax and pressed his signet. He lifted the paper so the nurse could see the mark. She murmured that she had seen and heard. She told them she would carry a copy to the Valide at dawn. Then the lattice closed. Now the room held only two. Mihrimah watched him fold the vow. He set it beside the earlier paper. He asked if she had any final condition. She said one more. He would not bring another wife into her household without her consultation. He paused, then agreed. He added a line to the vow. He signed again. He returned the pen. One promise could redraw the court. She considered the belt. He kept his hand still. Outside, the festival sounds faded. The palace settled. Lanterns along the colonnade dimmed. The guard at the door changed. The nurse cleared her throat once, and then kept quiet. Time stretched toward dawn. They were not racing the clock. The clock was watching them. Rustam had earned power by endurance. Campaign seasons, audits, cold councils. But this hour taught a different lesson. He saw her measure him by patience, not force. The harem taught men to obey terms. A princess did not beg for respect. She named it, wrote it, and waited. He adapted. He breathed. He let silence prove him. He risked everything for her report. In 1539, the Gerdek did not stand alone. It linked to office. The Valide and the Black Eunuch tracked outcomes. A bride's complaint could place a quiet note in a ledger. That note could bar a post 5 years later. It could end a candidacy without open charge. The secret reached full shape now. The first night served the court as a compliance test, not passion, not bravado. Submission to contract under pressure. A single word could bend a career. Back to the chamber. She rose and crossed to the window. She checked the lattice. She spoke the dawn times. He repeated them. She faced him. She said she would permit the first touch after he repeated the vow once more without paper. He did so. Word for word, calm tone, clear breath. She nodded. He waited for her hand. She moved to the bed. She set the rue aside. She lifted the belt ends and let them fall. She did not pull the knot yet. She asked him to sit. He obeyed. She named the names of her attendants again and told him he would treat them as if under the Valide's eye. He agreed. She asked him to visit her mother with her after noon prayer tomorrow. He agreed, steps before knots. Outside, a lone drum thudded once and stopped. The guard shifted feet. The nurse whispered a short prayer. The candles hissed low. The chamber felt smaller but calmer. She took one breath and steadied her hands. The night would end in a sentence. She reached the knot. She paused. She looked at the vow. She looked at him. She said she would permit now. He inclined his head and rose, slow and careful. He lifted his hands, then stopped as a soft rap touched the outer door. A runner had arrived from the corridor with a message for the nurse, who sends a note to the bridal door before dawn. The runner spoke through the lattice. A note for the nurse. No name given. Daya Hatun broke the seal and read. She cleared her throat and spoke one line for both to hear. The Valide required one last confirmation before consent. The vow again, aloud. Then the bride would decide. Silence pressed against the wood. Rustam stepped back. He did not reach. He faced Mihrimah and repeated each clause. He would not touch her belt without her word. He would honor her attendance. He would keep her access to her mother. He would consult her each week on petitions. He would not move her residence without consent. He would not bring another wife without consultation. He spoke slow. He kept his eyes level. One slip would stain the dawn. The nurse murmured that she had heard. She slid the lattice shut. The corridor hushed. The candle near the bed spat a tiny spark and steadied. Wax scented the air. The rue lay on the cushion like a small green line. The ink on his vow had dried to a dull sheen. Her belt ends brushed her wrist. The silk felt cool. Breath set the pace now. She rose. He waited. She stood before him with the belt knot between her hands. She did not hurry. She asked him if he understood that her report at sunrise would be complete. He answered that he did. He added that he asked no favor, only truth. She watched his face for a sign of strain. She saw none. She nodded. Truth could raise or ruin him. The chamber shrank to 3 sounds: the wick, their breath, the faint step of the guard. She touched the knot, then stopped. She looked at the sealed vow again. She looked at the door. She looked back at him. She said a short blessing. He answered it. Word perfect. She lifted the belt ends and loosened the knot 1 finger's width. One motion fixed years of rank. He did not move. He waited for her word. She said now. He stepped forward with care. He lifted the veil edge as she allowed. He spoke his name and hers together. He kept his voice low. The silk warmed under his hand. She kept the pace. She told him to stop, then to continue, then to stop again. He obeyed each command without a sound of protest. Obedience was the test, not force. She signaled the nurse once with a soft knock. The answer came. A single tap. All was in order. No one entered. No one watched. Witness remained outside the door, not inside the room. The chamber stayed theirs. She closed her eyes for one long breath. The night held steady. Near the window, a draft moved the flame. The light shifted. The belt lay open. The linen strip waited folded on the stool. The silver bowl caught a line of light. She spoke to him again. He repeated the vow a final time, without stumbling. She lifted his hand and placed it where she permitted. He followed the line she set. He had learned the rhythm of restraint. Minutes passed without words. Then she stepped back and straightened the quilt. She told him to sit. He sat. She poured water and handed him the cup. He drank. He thanked her. She drank after him. She set the cup down and looked toward the door. Dawn would ask for language, not detail. They stood together and recited a brief prayer. They agreed on the visit to her mother after noon prayer. They agreed that the nurse would carry the written vow at daybreak. They agreed that she would speak first to the Valide's agent. No new terms, no changes. Only the record. The report would decide his road. A faint call stirred somewhere in the city. Not yet the muezzin. A watchman's voice, far off. The guard shifted again. The candle burned low. She drew the quilt. He blew out one lamp. The last light held. They lay still, with space between them, as the rules required before consent to closeness. She set her hand on the pillow and spoke the final sentence of the night. She said she would give a favorable report. The nurse's knuckles rapped twice in answer. The lattice slid a finger's width. A folded copy of the vow passed through to her tray. The door closed. Quiet returned. But would the corridor carry her exact words at sunrise? Dawn reached the corridor first. The nurse stood ready with the tray. The vow lay folded with the seal. Mihrimah rose. She spoke through the lattice to the women's court agent. She said her words clearly. She said she would give a favorable report. The agent repeated her phrasing back to her. Then the runner carried the copy away. Records remember tone, not warmth. The question from the night closed. The corridor carried her exact words. The copy reached the head of the women's court. In these years, that office moved with Mihrimah Sultan, the Haseki, not a reigning Valide. The title differed. The power did not. The chief black eunuch entered the note in his book. Vow given, obedience shown, bride content. Silence protected the chamber. Paper moved the empire. The couple prayed. They dressed. The matrons entered to set the room in order. The nurse checked the bowl and linen. No gossip left the threshold. Only the phrase she had chosen at midnight. Outside, drums returned for the day's last rites of the festival. Inside, the princess ate a small tray and sent sweets to her attendants. One sentence had done its work. 3 weeks later, the court reassigned posts. Rustem received an order for provincial command. He left for the east with honors. The palace read the timing as approval. A man who failed in the chamber did not gain a governorship. He might serve, but not rise. Rustem's rise continued. He returned to the capital with stronger allies. In 1544, he reached the Grand Vizierate. Promotion followed the ledger, not rumor. Mihrimah's married life settled into pattern. She held audiences for petitions each week, as he had vowed. She kept her 2 senior attendants by her door. She visited her mother freely. She signed letters to her father on matters of charity and appointments. She bore children, including Aishi Humasha. She became a patron in her own right. Mimar Sinan built her complexes in Üsküdar and at Edirne. Foundations fed travelers, students, and the poor. A chamber shaped a decade. Stakes rose with the realm. In 1553, the court fractured over the fate of Shehzada Mustafa. Rustem fell from office amid the storm. He withdrew. The women's court held ground and measured words. 2 years later, he returned to the vizierate. The empire understood the signal. Old notes still counted. Mihrimah's voice still carried weight. A vow endures longer than a season. She outlived him. Rustem died in 1561. She continued her works. She guided household alliances. She corresponded on campaigns. She supported building after building. She guarded the rule hammered out on her first night. Permission spoken, conditions kept, respect observed. Her attendants stayed. Her counsel reached desks beyond her door. Years turned. The rule stayed simple. The fear that opened the night had never been a private fear alone. It belonged to the court. The bedding ritual tested more than bodies. It tested whether a future Grand Vizier could obey terms with the door shut and the hour heavy. Mihrimah understood that test. She used it. She set the pace. She named the words. She made the record. Power traveled on breath, seal, and witness. The note sent before dawn came from Hürrem's office. It demanded a last allowed vow so that no one could later dispute the terms. The palace preferred paper to remembrance. The night gave both. One test, one ledger, one road forward. She died in 1578. Her mosques still stand. Her name sits on deeds and stones. Her first night sits in a line of ink. It tied a husband to a promise. It tied a promise to rank. It tied rank to service. You stand again at that door. You smell the smoke and the rosewater. You feel the knot under your palm. Would you hold the silence long enough to make the empire listen?